And listen, what I excelled in the first year. I excelled in that fashion administration, which was never even in my knowledge bank. I didn't even know what is that. Even the subject that I was doing there, they were new to me. But I excelled. I managed to pass a university by then. It wasn't easy for me when I started because I had to stay at home. I had to travel using the public transport to school and public transport back home. So you can imagine the stress when the classes finishes at 6, you have to rush and get a taxi back to the township in Medezan. So I would say it was a little bit difficult for me, but on the second year I managed to get a scholarship and I was able to get a space inside the residence students.
So in your 25 years of being a leader, has there been any negativity or negative thoughts, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot, I'm telling you. I don't want to traumatize the young ladies, but I can tell you now, it's not an easy journey. Maybe to start off is to say, you start by praying. And another thing that I learned is that in leadership is not about being the best in the room. It's about being able to create the environment for your colleagues. It's about being able to let the experts play their parts. Don't make yourself like you know everything, because you will crumble and they will laugh at you. So open that opportunity for them. You grow with your colleagues, you grow with your team, and make sure that you also assist your team to grow. Failing or struggling does not mean that you are incapacitated or you are incapable. So just be yourself. Just have something to motivate you. Why are you here? Besides the friends and the roommates that you are with here, why are you here? Just have that drawing board to say, you write down, why are you here? And each and every time you feel like you're failing, you're struggling, just go back to your drawing board to check it. What were the reasons I came here? Am I still on track? Just check yourself.
Sanbonani, hello, hi, and welcome to the Top Woman podcast. Today I'm sitting with an extraordinary woman. I'm getting tongue-tied trying to think of an introduction for her today because of the amazing work she has done throughout her career. Please forgive me if I'm going to be looking down at my iPad, because I know for a fact I am not wise or strong enough to go toe to toe with her qualifications and all the amazing work she has done in her career. Today, I am sitting with Unombuso Ntele, looking ravishing in white. Sis Nombuso, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, Zamain. How are you?
You look so beautiful, like a cupcake. You look so
Thank
soft,
you so much.
so feminine. And then I read your profile, and I am saying to myself, I love the intro where I basically say you have a portfolio of chaos. And it's amazing work. Let me read it for the viewers at home. Managing 4 silos at once: human resources, information and communication technology, legal services, and safety, health, environment, and quality. Though is a lot, it's a mouthful, that's a tongue tie. So tell me once, you have all these portfolios that you are currently running. How are you able to do it all?
Yes, Zama, I like that question because somebody will say it's just 4 portfolios.
Yeah.
But when you go deeper, you will understand that it's a lot. It's a lot, especially because when you compare it with my qualification and my experience, it's totally different. But what I can say, I love HR. I'm an HR specialist myself before I became a leader. So that's how I grew up from tertiary. I grew under the umbrella of HR. So that's why it's just something easy for me. Check legal and ICT, especially the ICT side, which is information and communication technology. It's totally new to my portfolio. So I started in IDZ in 2021. That's when I started managing these 4 portfolios. And I would say the one that stands out for me is the information and communication technology. You know why, Zama? It's because of the current trend that is happening here, the issue of IA fuel threats, the issue of cyber attacks. So I'm the one who's supposed to protect the organization. I am expected to provide a 24-hour vigilance on our systems. And it keeps me on toes, because if you can imagine anything happening, that can ruin the reputation of the organization.
Yes.
It can ruin our systems, especially the financial systems. You will find that the company is losing billions and millions of rands because of the attacks. So that is the one that I can say it's standing out and it stresses me a lot. It gives me sleepless nights because of that. But what I do now is to put the strategies in place so that I counter-attack myself, or I put measures in place to ensure that we are not vulnerable, we are not prone to the environment. We've got policies, effective and efficient policies, we've got strategies in place, and all what we do on a monthly basis, we also do awarenesses to our users so that everyone is aware, because it can just come in with one user who's not aware. So we ensure that we roll out our awarenesses throughout the whole organization. And I hope that will help. We are trying to improve each and every day. Otherwise, I'm fine with my portfolios. I love my portfolios. I'm enjoying it, actually.
Now, I want us to go back. You had all these portfolios in 2021.
Yes.
During that time in South Africa, it was a time of unrest. We were just tipping into the looting. We were knee deep into COVID. And then you get tasked with all of this. Now, you're coming from an HR perspective. I can only imagine how complicated the systems, you've just explained it, that the ICT has. How did you manage all of that with having the stress of this new job, of not even a job, the responsibility, you know, because anything can be a job, but the responsibility of a multi-billionaire company, that's completely different. How did you manage that, but still manage to keep your emotions intact? Because now you're in essential work. It's during COVID. You know, the fear of leaving your home, leaving your family and going forward, you know, going to work and doing all of that. How did you manage those emotions, and what did you say to yourself to keep your mind on track?
I would say it wasn't an easy thing to do. But fortunately, our company allowed us to work from home. So that was one of the stress relievers, especially because I've got young ones at home. By the time, they were still young, like 8 and 9. So that was a stress reliever to my side to say, okay, at least I'll be working from home. But at the same time, especially the shared parts, I'm expected to protect the employees of this organization. So we had these rapid response committees where we normally sit virtually to try and come up with the mitigation actions for our employees, but we ensure that our employees are safe at home, but at the same time, we are getting the value of work that we should have got when we're in the office. So there were these check-in daily from the side of our employees, trying to manage the employees virtually. It's not an easy one, but we tried our best because we did not want to lose the mandates of the organization, as we are tasked with the mandates of economic development. So we had to ensure that we still push, we still do that at the same time, while also managing the crisis in the country. So I would say it wasn't an easy period for us, but yeah, we did try to manage, and I did survive, as I'm here today.
Yeah, I was just about to say you survived and you conquered. You follow back Sislumbuso to tertiary. Now, I don't think in any way in your mind you thought that with the degree that you want to do, this is where you'll be right now. Sure. And unfortunately, right now in South Africa, we are faced with a climate that doesn't encourage learning, that doesn't encourage. You've had problems with our matriculants, with the complaints that the pass rate has been reduced to 30%. You know, and then people have an issue when they get to varsity that you might have passed matric, but you cannot enter the institution itself. You are now at the tender age of, let's say, anything between 18 and 20. It's your first year. You've taken the decision to further your studies. What was going on in your mind? Did you have a clear path that you want to take? What did you study, and how till you get here today?
You know, I am laughing. It's like you're a prophet. When I was doing grade 12, I was 16 by then. I applied for a microbiologist degree. I wanted to be a microbiologist, so I applied for a microbiology degree. That was my number one choice at UKZN. Listen what? I was not accepted because of my marks. So now I had to think of something else. I had to think of something else urgently. Then I applied at ML Sultan. This was ML Sultan by then. I think now it's DUT.
Yes.
For a journalist. Can you believe it? It wasn't even my choice.
Yeah.
But the only reason I did that is because it was the one that is available for me. So I applied for this. I was accepted. When I went back home to my mother, she said, no. She said, no. I'm not allowing you to do that. Rather go for nursing. My mother is a nurse.
Oh,
so
okay.
she wanted me to
follow
her.
her.
Exactly.
Yes.
And my biology, by the time I got a B in biology, so it was just suitable for me. I was like ready for it, but I said, no.
It's not for
I'm
me.
sorry, Mami, I will disappoint you, but I'm not going there. So the last option I had is to go to Ongoye, University of Zululand, because it's nearer to home, it's nearer to everything, because I grew up here in Mbangeni. So at the age of 17, then I had to go to UniZulu. Listen what? The only option they gave me is the Bachelor of Administration. I don't even know what is. What the heck is that?
Yes.
I was so frustrated. I had to go back home and tell my mother, Mama, I got an acceptance, but it's Bachelor of Administration. And everybody was asking me, what is that? What's it gonna be? Because remember, previously you had to say something like a profession that is well known, like to say
a lawyer, a teacher.
Yes. So when you come with something like Bachelor of Administration, what is that? Uzoba itlek, like it was undermined. Yes, it was really undermined to that extent. So I said to her, it's fine, Mommy, let me take it. If it gets maybe difficult, or if there are chances or opportunities, then I will divert to any other qualification. So I had to go and register for that. And listen what, I excelled in the first year. I excelled in that Bachelor of Administration, which was never even in my knowledge bank. I didn't even know what is that. Even the subject that I was doing there, they were new to me. But I excelled. I managed to pass a university by then. It wasn't easy for me when I started because I had to stay at home. I had to travel using the public transport to school and public transport back home. So you can imagine the stress when the classes finishes at 6, you have to rush and get a taxi back to the township in Melizane. So I would say it was a little bit difficult for me, but on the second year I managed to get a scholarship and I was able to get a space inside the residence of students.
I want to take you back now. I'm very interested as you tell me about your varsity days. I want to know about Usis Nombuso wasengwelezane elokishi kusanomwelasi with the famous Ushishiliza eGaraji wamwelase and all of that, you know. How was growing up in Gwelezane?
I would say, Zama, I wouldn't have much experience because when I completed my grade 7, I had to move to Pietermaritzburg, which was a boarding school. This was around 1990. I don't know whether, but you're still young, Zama. You are too young for that. Yeah. So 1990 was a very chaotic year in terms of politics, the violence in the country. So my parents decided that no, you are going to boarding school next year. So the experience I have from Gwelezane, it's from like primary levels up to grade 7. Yes. You know, when you're a kid, you just don't mind anything. It was fine for me because, as you are saying, we were playing on the streets with the friends and stuff like that. But I will tell you one thing. When I was in boarding school in Pietermaritzburg, then there were times that I had to go back home during school holidays. And remember this violence in this area. It was bad, I'm telling you. It was so frustrating. I remember at one time, just around our streets, they killed someone in front of me. And by the time I was only 13 years, I can still remember everything that happened. It was very bad, seeing people shooting each other, seeing people dying. It wasn't a good experience at all. I wouldn't have wished for my kids to see that at that age because it's so traumatizing. So each time I go back home, to school, I would think of my parents, I would think of my siblings, of how are they doing. Remember, Zama, there was no time for cell phones and stuff. You only use the telecom landline and once in a while to check how are they doing. So that was one moment where I was getting frustrated and stressed because I didn't know what is really happening because of what I saw at home. Yeah, but yeah, here we are today.
And you survived and you flourished.
I really survived.
Let's fast track, let's fast forward now. Okay. You've been in leadership for plus minus 24 years. And that's a long time as a black female, you know, coming from the streets of Ngwelezane, you know.
I like it.
You know. I want us to take a private moment outside of the glitz and glam of having to sit in front of people and be a leader. I suffer from something, Sis Nombuso, called imposter syndrome, where I sit sometimes in a room and there's negative, like it's a small voice in the back of my mind that says, you do not belong. Yeah, look at these people that you are sitting with. They've achieved this, they've done this, you've done that. We're they, you know. So you sit with that confidence because you can't show the people around you that these are the negative thoughts that sometimes come to you.
You have to look
confident in all that you do, you know, and never look like your problems, as they say.
Sure.
So in your 25 years of being a leader, has there been any negativity or negative thoughts, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot, I'm telling you. I don't want to traumatize the young ladies, but I can tell you now, it's not an easy journey. Maybe to start off is to say, you start by praying. You must be a prayerful woman. You must know your God. Otherwise, you won't survive. It's hectic out there. Even the people that you consider sometimes your role models will be something else sometimes. So maybe to get back to your question, I think what made me survive is to associate myself with the successful people, to involve myself in communities that are successful, groups that are talking about development, engaging in education. I remember when I was still growing up, like at a young age, 24, 25, 26, I was always studying. After finishing this degree, I would study something else. No matter how small, you'll find that I'm just doing a 6-month program. I'm just doing a short courses, formal qualifications. So I think that helped me a lot to be able to grow in my leadership. And another thing that I learned is that in leadership, it's not about being the best in the room. It's about being able to create the environment for your colleagues. It's about being able to let the experts play their parts. Don't make yourself like you know everything, because you will crumble and they will laugh at you. So open that opportunity for them. You grow with your colleagues, you grow with your team, and make sure that you also assist your team to grow. Don't just push them away from it, because you will have a challenge. You will really have a challenge. So I think by doing all these activities, it assists me a lot in order for me to be an imposter. So it just diminishes. I make sure that I collaborate. I make sure that I invite ideas. I do consider people ideas. My team will tell you, say, I do consider people ideas. The reason I'm doing this, I want them to grow. I want them to feel accommodated in this leadership role that I'm in. I want them to see themselves up one day. And another thing I do, when I'm not available at work, I make sure that I leave them to act and give them the full dedication to act. I'm testing them. I just want to see if they are ready for this position. So I think all that is helping me a lot to grow and also not to be an imposter.
You've also been, Sis Nombuso, a director of municipal services. And funny story that the viewers at home don't know. I actually know Sis Nombuso before this, and I know you through my father.
Yes.
And those of you who know me and those that have met my father can tell you those are two polar opposites. Unyamboso, he's very strict, you know. And one thing I always knew about his work, I never knew much about his work, but I've heard nuggets from other people that, especially working in municipal services, you need to have a level of strictness. Mind you, my father, you remind me of him as well with the level of wanting education to further your studies, you know. He was one of those people who got into higher education at a later stage in his life. So I have two questions, but the first one, here you are now, you've got this leadership position. There's people of different ages, you know, different beliefs. They also are educated in their own right, you know. Some of them, you know how it is in the municipality, some of them might be even overqualified for the positions that they are in, you know. Do you think that the education that you have and your continuous love to study has imparted you the opportunity to be able to lead these people outside of whatever might it be demographics, might be an education level.
Yeah.
But for you constantly wanting to better yourself education-wise, has that assisted you?
Yes, I would definitely say it has. It has, Sana. Especially my honors degree, which is the industrial psychology degree. That one has assisted me a lot because I had to study the human beings. I have to study their behavior. I have to study organizational management, how to manage the organization. So the information that I gathered, even through my research at that level, has assisted me to grow a lot in this field. Because I will say, because without education in this level, you won't survive. You definitely won't survive. Education equips you to think critically. It equips you to take informed decision, because people will mislead you intentionally. So they will mislead you to let you sign things that are not in order because they know that you don't know. As a leader, you cannot know everything, but education will equip you to analyze. It will equip you to critically think before taking any decision, and also to consider the legislative framework that is there for you before you take any decision. So I will definitely motivate anyone who's aspiring to be an executive or to be a leader in any form of an organization to say, equip yourself. Education never ends, Zama. Education never ends. It's either it goes up the hierarchy or it's horizontally. It's any form. Even reading a book at night, it's still education, because you are getting something. You are getting the knowledge that will assist you and equip you to move forward. Yeah, it's not an easy thing, but try to do it. I know maybe sometimes when you grow, like when we're old like us, there are a lot of other factors affecting your family. You can't study, stress, work pressures. But make sure that you just do something, no matter how small, just to equip yourself so that you can be able to lead. Otherwise, you won't survive. I don't want to lie to you. You won't survive. People are educated. Yes. Your subordinates are educated. Some of them are educated even more than you. They think they know more than you. And funny enough, I encourage them to do that. I've currently registered for PhD. I'm encouraging my subordinates to register. There is one that has graduated on master's. I said, register for PhD as well. I don't mind whether we are in the same level. As long as you will get there, I'll be happy. Because one day I will look at you and say, oh, Uzama is there. I contributed. That's what makes me happy. So I think I'll end there for that question.
I need to follow up on that, because even the way Ukuluma, the way you speak about this, the one thing I'm picking up is humility. How are you able to remain so humble with all that you have achieved? Because I'll be honest and say, being a woman, first and foremost, being a woman is difficult. Being a woman in leadership is even more difficult. Being a woman in leadership who has subordinates, who has now to lead teams, departments, industries, there's attacks from all over. How are you able to remain so down to earth and so humble? Because I think we are taught something negative, saying that in order for you to be a leader, you need to act like a bully. Exactly. You need to have this armor so that people don't, you need to walk up with this pompous kind of stature so that people can't easily get to you and you can't be vulnerable. But you are showing that level of vulnerability of saying to your subordinates, study, achieve this, be better than me. If you can get there first, then that's how I've done it. How are you able to still remain so humble?
Yeah, I think maybe my background played a huge role. Coming from a Christian family, the values of the family were very strong to say respect wherever you go. So I think the way I grew up, it shaped me, it modeled me to what I am today. I think mostly my mother. My mother is my role model. She's very humble. She's a very humble woman. So I think I took it from her. And my personality, I'm just a humble person by nature. And God bless me with the love for people. I love people. I love to see people grow. I love to see people reaching their goals. Me maybe another thing that affects me a lot in this position is to see maybe somebody losing her job or his job. Because I love people. I don't want to see people losing their job. I don't want to see people failing in their job. I don't know, maybe it's how I was born, like my personality, it's in that level. And another thing that topped it's for me being a prayer woman, a Christian. So even the Bible is guiding me on humility. So I think that's why. Yeah, I think that's why.
I think
Thank you so much.
that is one thing, and I wish that our viewers at home can also take it to heart as well.
Yes,
that you can achieve a lot,
yes,
but it does not mean that you need to agree.
And another thing, Zama, irrespective you earn it, you don't demand it. Exactly. Once you pull up your shoulders and say, I'm a boss here, you will start seeing the true colors of your team. Yes. So your respect is earned, just respect, just be disciplined, and just be humble. And you'll see the cooperation that you'll receive from them. That will be my advice to the leaders.
And then on that, there's a Zulu saying that says, "Umuntu mezi sandla, masethatha ingalo yonke." How are you able now? Because I think that's where a lot of people tend, and the switch comes.
Yeah.
Because they are humble, and then they try to work in that sense of an environment. But like we said before, you work with you lead different personalities, different minds, different thinking patterns, you know. How do you know that, how do you create that line that, okay, there's boundaries, you know? How do you create boundaries in the workplace, in your achievements, but also not having people feel like they can't talk to you or engage with you?
Yeah, that's a very critical one, because people can take advantage. There was something in Taking Turns in WhatsApp that says if you are having a good heart, people will take advantage, something to that effect. Yes. So I was saying this is very true. People do take advantage of that if they see that, oh no, she's humble, she's nice. They call she's nice, and they will take advantage. So you are right, you have to set boundaries. Especially at work, you have to set boundaries. They must know this, you are still their leader no matter what. The fact that I'm showing them love, I'm showing them support, I'm showing them the way I'm leading them, I'm guiding them, does not mean that I'm stupid. So they mustn't take advantage of that. How do I do that? We have our monthly meetings where we talk about these things. We talk about discipline, we talk about values, and you put your foot down to say, this must happen. This will not happen within my unit. So I think it helps. They will understand what as far as you are generous or you are humble, they will know that, but she goes up to this boundary. I mustn't step this boundary. So you are right, you have to set your boundaries, but your employees also must know your boundaries so that they don't overstep the boundaries.
Let's go back to Richards Bay IDZ.
Yeah.
You know,
my favorite.
Yeah.
I did not tell you that, Zama. It's my favorite employer, I'm telling you. I'm proud to be an employee of RBIDZ.
I feel like you can even, I'm jealous. Yeah. You know, I want to be employed. The environment, the space itself.
It's so calm, it's so professional. It's something out of this world.
I definitely might be loud, but I think they'll take me.
Yeah.
So one of the few things that you do at IDZ is that you have to attract foreign investors to invest in South Africa.
Yeah.
And as you know, South Africa, there's always something going on. It's a tumultuous relationship we have with other foreign nationals. So let's take an example. You have a foreign national from China, for example, that wants to invest into South Africa. And they might list a long list of negative things why they don't think their money should be invested in South Africa, why other leaders should not invest into South Africa. Yeah. How are you able to sit in that meeting, hold royal big? They say that's what they say in Africa, it's royal big. You know, stand your ground, be able to defend your country, and because these the people you are dealing with, it's not chum.
I'm telling
change.
you.
You know, it's really people who want to. They're not just investing in Richards Bay, but what they do plant in Richards Bay, that seed will grow throughout South Africa. How do you stand your ground? What do you say to yourself to prepare yourself to speak in those rooms?
Yeah. Firstly, Zama, me working for RBIDZ, we've got a mandate, and our mandate is economic development through investment attraction, as you have correctly said. So there is no country without challenges. All the countries have got their own challenges, especially globally. They know what is currently happening in South Africa. They know our challenges of unemployment. They are aware of our challenges of our infrastructure, challenges of energy. There is a lot that is going on. So they are all aware of what is currently happening. So I'll be lying to myself if I can just project South Africa as the country. So what I can do maybe to present my company to them is to capitalize on our strengths as the country. I think that will assist a lot because I'll be telling them that we've got the deepest ports in Richards Bay. We've got a potential areas here where you can invest. We've got mineral resources in South Africa. South Africa is a developing country, so I can use those to capitalize to attract them. I think for me, presenting the truth more than trying to cover codes in your country will assist a lot. They will see that this person is genuine. She's aware of the challenges they are facing in South Africa, and also maybe if there are mitigation actions taken, then present to them those mitigation actions to say the country is doing 1, 2, 3 in order to improve. Like what is currently happening, the issue of immigration, we know that the president has addressed us and there are actions to be taken to address it. So present that to them, just to give them confidence to say, this is the action in place, but over and above this is our strength. So your project will be doing well when you come and invest in South Africa. I think that's how I can address it.
I'm so excited for the girl child at home watching this show, seeing you speak, the way you radiate. I think it's very man, there's no way I can say it possibly, but the passion in what you do, you know. And then, so I want to take it back now to you having studied your masters, you know, the difficulties that you might have faced. But more than anything, like I said to the girl child sitting at home, the excitement, seeing you appear the way you appear, beautiful, strong, confident in what you do. Like I said at the start, is that unfortunately right now, in the state that South Africa is in, education has been made less fashionable, you know, especially for young girls.
True.
You know, that's why we do this podcast, Sis Nombos, so that we can find gems like you in small cities like Richards Bay. You know, we can show to people out there that there is Unombuso Okon who's dominating this field, you know, who's surviving, who's dominating this field. Now Unombuso said, right now in 2026, you know, you have somebody to look up to. Because that's the one problem I feel like we have as females right now. We don't have a lot of representation. True. And only that, we don't have a lot of role models. You know, the role models that we do have, I will never knock anyone's hustle. You know, what works for you works for you. But what is it saying to the next generation? You know, and you fought for it tooth and nail through education. You know, and I know you're currently working towards your PhD, but I want to talk about your masters.
Yeah.
You know, how was that journey? Was there in any point when you're studying your masters and you're like, I can't, I'm gonna give up? So, because I also want to educate about and motivate them that you have this diploma, continue. You have your matric, continue. You have your degree, continue. You think you've done your honors, it's not the end. Continue.
I do agree, Zam. That one, I've got bad memories of it, but I will share it with the viewers.
Yes.
I did my master's when I was working for the municipality, and you can imagine the stressful environment I was under. And I think I was in my first trimester with my last born, having been a wife, a mother to a 2-year busy girl, in this first trimester, my master's on top of that. So you can imagine it was a very stressful journey for me.
Yes.
There were times where I wanted to quit. Fortunately, I was studying it together with my husband. So there was this motivation by me, who's also a child on his own. So I would say it was a very stressful journey, Zama. I don't want to lie to you. I felt so drained with the work pressures, personal responsibilities, and also the academic demands. So it was too much for me. But what kept me going, it's the determination and fantasizing about the future. I really wanted this degree, Zama. I really wanted this degree. You know what happened? When I was starting my first degree, I said one day I will wear a red gown. So there's no way I can wear a red gown without this degree. And if I quit now, the kids are growing. Then that means I will do it when they are like 18 or so. There's no other time. No more so push. No more so do this. You will achieve it. It was a 3-year master's. Can you imagine? So I had to do first year, second year, and third year. The third year was just the research. But yeah, I think I would say the thing that pushed me a lot was just the discipline, the determination to say, I really want to achieve this. I need this qualification. So I would say motivation will push you where you see that discipline is now lacking, you're not disciplined, you are stressed, you are just out of your mind because of this degree. So yeah, I will encourage young ones to study, to do masters. It's the degree. It's the degree. And also what I can advise, it's not for them to do it in one institution. Let's say you graduated to ongoing. Try to do it somewhere else, just to have that combination. It makes somebody who's looking at your CV to trust your CV. Because you know what is happening around. People will say, oh, everything, diploma ongoing, master's ongoing. I'm just making an example because it's my favorite university. Tongo is my favorite university. That's where I started to see degree. So I will always value ongoing. So I will advise the young ones to say, go for internationally possible or go for any other universities in South Africa. Just have a mixture of qualifications. It assists when we are scrutinizing the CVs because we can see that this person is versatile. She fits everywhere. So yeah, I will encourage them to do that. It's not an easy journey, but try to be resilient. Try to push and motivate yourself. Just find the motivation to say, this is my motivation no matter what. I couldn't sleep sometimes because the child is crying, there's this pregnancy here, the husband is demanding this and that. So it wasn't easy at all. But I said, Nombuso, there is no way you're quitting. There is no space for quitters in this world. So I pushed until I finished my 3 years.
On that, while you're still there, I want to talk about industrial psychology. I think when you did it, you had the perception that it was going to aid you a lot in your leadership role. But human nature is another thing. You know, what have you learned about human nature in the workforce and the workplace that your degree never prepared you for?
Hey, that's a very nice one.
Yes.
I think I've learned that you can be an excellent leader. You can do every, like I was saying, I'm humble to them. I try to support them. I give them all the support. But people will always be people. People will always be resilient and resist. Like they will always resist some initiatives that you put in place. There will always be negative. Sometimes they mix personal emotions with work. I'll make an example. Let's say there's someone that you have to discipline because of maybe the misconduct or whatever. You'll find that person now having personal issues with you, trying to separate that this is work, this is personal issues. So I've learned that the books did not taught me how to handle that, but through the experience, I can handle it now. now. I can definitely handle it now. What makes me win is to be compliant to the policies, be sure of what you are doing, so that you don't get yourself not being sure of your decision. So it assists when you know your policies, you know the legislation. Whatever decision you are taking, you are sure that you are 100% sure that it's right. It's the right decision. It's an informed decision. So that's what I learned about people.
While we're talking about people and human nature, you're a mother of 2 daughters. You know, and I can imagine, you know, and you're a leader everywhere, basically. Having girl children, that means their first mother is you know. But now, are you ever conflicted where you have, because your work is very demanding, and your work demands you personally, you know, how have you been able to balance work and family life? Because let's say you, an instance, we spoke before we started shooting, and we spoke about sometimes you might be needed over the weekend or after working hours, you know, and you have a crisis with your daughters, you know. And I think maybe now they understand that mommy is working, but kids will be kids. True. Where it's like, but it's mommy and me time. Why is mommy working at this time? How have you been able to manage work, family, being a wife, being a mom? How do you balance?
Again, that's not an easy one, but I tried my best to tell myself that what brings food on my table. Not that I'm not prioritizing my family, but I'm trying to get that motivation to keep on going, to try to balance the life. And going back to the books told me about work-life balance. So I try to apply those principles to say, I have to give more to my family sometimes and less to work, or more to work and less to the family, depending on the priorities at that stage. So I think that kept me going. They are now like 14 and 13. They are big girls now, and they're in boarding school. So now I'm able to manage my work life better because they are no longer with us at home. But when they were growing up, you had sports, you have this and that, so many curricular activities that you have to attend as a woman and as a mother, while the council or the municipality requires your attention as well. So it wasn't an easy journey at all. But what I taught myself is that, okay, let me apply the principle that I learned in school, the work-life balance. And I think it has helped me a lot, because I'll just prioritize to say, okay, this week this is important more than this, then I need to pay attention more on this one. And sometimes it's so stressful, sometimes you feel drained, you feel exhausted. You ask yourself, you even watch those housewives to say, oh, if one day I can be a housewife, look at how luxurious life they're living. But now it comes back to your senses to say, but you need this money, Nombuso, so you have to keep on pushing, you have to work. The only thing you have to do, just try to balance the two and ensure that it doesn't disturb the life of your kids as well. They must know that mother is always there for me. Mommy is always there for me whenever I need her. So just try to balance the work life as well as the family life.
While you're speaking about that, I want to go back to your profile. So at the bottom of your profile, it talks about your interests. I saw tennis, I saw traveling, I saw baking. And that made me like smile and brought a sense of joy, because it made you feel so real. Now this is different. The views, it's very different from the views, because we are conversating like this. I just had a piece of paper, and like I said, when you see a piece of paper and you read somebody's profile, and it starts with their achievements and all of that, you start to have a steel wall about it. You think of this rigid, strong, you know. And then when I saw your interest, it gave a sense of vulnerability. You know. So I could go back and imagine you stressed with your masters, and you there cooking and you baking, trying to de-stress. So I want to find out, what does a Sunday look like for you?
One day.
Yes.
On a Sunday morning. Listen, I'll start by saying baking makes my mind relaxed, and it assists me with my creativity skills. So each time I do something, I become creative, and I said, "Oh, okay, I can do this. Oh, all right." I test my creativity skills, so hence I like baking. But on a normal Sunday, we go to church as a family. It's compulsory. There is no other way, unless maybe there is a function or a funeral somewhere else. But if it's just a normal Sunday, everybody goes to church. My girls sometimes say, "Oh, mommy, we slept late." I said, "If you're still here in my home, we're going." I think I saw something on WhatsApp like this. I said, "This is me. This is me. I won't allow you to stay behind." If it's Sunday, we all go to church. When I come back from church, I cook a storm for my family. I like cooking as well. I bake for the week to say, okay, let me choose something to bake and apply my creativity skills. And I listen to this music, Sunday soul music. I love it. There is no Sunday without it. So after doing all that, we sit down. My husband will listen to music, and that's it. And the weekend is over. I'll then know that the weekend is over. So yeah, those are my interests. As well as playing tennis. I like playing tennis. It's so challenging. It challenges me to run all over the field. I'm not a good runner, but it assists me to run all over the field. Yes. So I love tennis. I also love traveling. Zama, I'm an outgoing person. Unfortunately, I met somebody who loves traveling as well. We travel a lot. We've got this schedule to say 4 times a year we must go somewhere else, depending on the budget as well. Yes. But we also take these small getaways. It doesn't have to be these expensive overseas trips. Even to go to us, it's a trip. It's a trip. Yes. So yeah, we like traveling. It helps us a lot to ease our minds. We both work in stressful environments. So we just say, let us switch off our phones. Let's go away maybe for a weekend or 3 days. It assists us a lot because we come back rejuvenated. We come back with new ideas, new ways of doing things. So it assists us a lot. I love traveling.
I want to ask you a personal question, Sister Mbuso. Yes. In right now, there's something I read as well. You know, our social media cats, you know, and it was a conversation about the generation of marriages right now in this generation and how feeble they are, you know. And it's like somebody is engaged today, divorced tomorrow. Like it's like a thing. It keeps, you know. How have you managed to keep a happy home, keep a happy family, and all of that?
Yeah, there is no perfect feminism. That's one thing for sure. It's all by God's grace, I would say. What helped me a lot is to pray for a partner. Just invest time in praying for your partner. To the young girls, don't rush into things. Don't rush into those Lazarus things and say, "Oh, he's got money, he's got that and that." Just invest your time in praying for your husband. My husband is not a saint, but all I know that God bless me with a husband. We are married now for how many years? 15 years. So to me, that's an achievement. Exactly. Yes. So I will say, invest in prayer. Tell God what you need, because you don't need anyone, but you've got this specific to say, "I need somebody with this and that and God. You know me, God. Please provide somebody that will match me." So I think that is one thing I can stand in for, to say, pray for a partner and keep on praying. You don't stop. Yeah, as you are correctly saying, you don't stop. You pray for your family, pray for your marriage, because anything can happen anytime. So you just invest in praying for your family as well. And again, what assists us a lot is to sit together and talk about issues. It's not that we don't quarrel. It's not that everything is smooth and it's a smooth ride. No, it's not. We sit and talk about issues. We try to iron issues. So communication is the best weapon. Yes, and you must know your partner. My husband is my friend, so we know each other so well. We talk about anything. So yeah, I think that keeps us going. We are looking for another 15 years more together.
Okay. We'll be there. I'll be there at the 50th anniversary. Thank you so much. I love love. And I do wish that the generation after us loves love as much as we do. And you try by all means, that beautiful, successful women that you, like you, continue the generation of saying, love is there, but more than anything, God is the foundation.
True.
Of
I wish you all
it
the
all.
best. I know Nyamboza will be very happy.
What day is one day? What is a man? I want to go back now, before our show ends, I want to go back now to RBIDZ.
Okay.
Out of 10, Sis Nombus, what would you rate yourself as an employee of RBIDZ?
Okay. I would say maybe 8 over 10.
The
The gap of 2, it's
Yeah.
not that there's something wrong with me, but I leave the room for improvement and room to grow. So I'm not 100%, but I'm 80%. The 20% is for me to grow, to learn, to put more effort and to achieve more and more and more. I'm saying that because I've got strategies in place that are in an execution stage. They are not just there for filing. You will find that the stakeholder satisfaction in the organization is like around about 94%, which means there is impact that we are doing in the organization. The collaborative nature of our business units, we are collaborating, we are aligned as business units. So to me, that's an achievement because you don't find that anywhere, anyhow. It depends on the organization. And again, I've established the issue of culture. We've got a participative culture in the organization where the employees will engage and also contribute to the final strategy of the organization. They will also contribute, their views contribute to the management of the organization. So to me, that's an achievement. That's why I'm saying 80 and then the 20% for me to improve and put more, and also to research on how to improve the organization because the aim is to improve and to be there globally.
My last question for you today, Sis Nombuso. If you were to be in a lecture hall with 500 students, all sitting there, it's their first year, they are nervous, they're not sure whether them even coming here was a good choice, they're stressed about finances, there's families,
home
backgrounds, all of that, with the ever-changing climate of South Africa. What would you say to those students, having you once been in those shoes?
Yes. That's a very critical one, especially now. Our youth can be easily influenced. When they come to big cities, they become fascinated and say, there's life here, and they tend to divert from what they are here for. So I will tell them that number one, failing or struggling does not mean that you are incapacitated or you are incapable. So just be yourself. Just have something to motivate you. Why are you here? Besides the friends and the roommates that you are with here, why are you here? Just have that drawing board to say, you write down, why are you here? And each and every time you feel like you're failing, you're struggling, just go back to your drawing board to check it. What were the reasons I came here? Am I still on track? Just check yourself. So I'll just motivate them to keep on pushing, keep on being there, keep on supporting each other. Just know why you're here. Just motivate yourself. Why are you in this institution? And also consider your goal, because it's very important. If you lose your goal, then the game is over. Why are you here? The game is over. Even if there are financial crises, just push, just stand for yourself to say, I'm going to get this. Just talk to yourself. It's very important to talk to yourself and say, I'm going to get this. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm going to get this money to pay for this institution. So I think that will help them to be able to stand and to be confident. And some of them, you'll find that they are not even confident. Shame when they see the kids with iPads and iPhones, say, oh, I'm coming from a poor background. Just know that you can change your situation. No one else can change your situation, but you can change your situation by being resilient in your degree until you achieve what you want.
I have nothing to follow up with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Nombuso, for sitting down with us. I know so many people are going to be empowered from this, not just young girls, but different demographics across South Africa are going to watch this and be motivated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Usis Nombuso Ntsele, and what a journey she has taken us through today on today's show. I'm amazed, I'm excited, and actually I'm quite motivated. Who knows? My name is Zama King McLaw. The show today was proudly driven by Midway Motors. This is The Top Woman. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe.